Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773's Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, download our free app, and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And what it comes down to is that I've been given a sacred journey. And the journey is to connect with a brotherhood that was creating melodically before I was born. They did not have curriculums. They did not grow up in academia. They played on the bandstand 6-7 nights a week, a lot of upholstered sewers. But in doing so, they created their own individual sound. And they met other human beings who they wound up collaborating with. And they created new vocabulary in music. When you put all this together, it breaks down one of the most vibrant parts of our cultural history in this country. And my guest today is a decorated musician who's played with a lot of titans, but at the end of the day, you know, if somebody came up to him and said, hey, you sounded just like so-and-so, he would want to slit his wrists. Greg Douglas, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Yes. Well, you know, so far my wrists are unsullied. So
good. So you've been doing yeah. But I mean, in all seriousness, I remember talking to a cat, the drummer for Tower of Power, David Garibaldi, and he was saying, if anybody came up to him after a jam at the On Broadway in Jack London Square, you're an Oakland cat. If anyone came up to him and said, "Oh, you were great. You sounded just like whoever, Fat Foot, Funky Foot Moore or whoever," he'd want to slit his wrists. So I mean, where in your mind were you always? Where did you develop your individuality from?
Well, you develop your individuality by picking certain heroes to emulate. In my case, my first hero was Dick Dale. He of Miserlou fame and Pulp Fiction, and my dad gave me a choice. He said, actually, he didn't give me a choice. He said, "You're taking up a musical instrument, period." Because I was, in my high school, I was the uber dork. I was the guy who stayed in his room and drew and, did nothing and didn't have any friends, and girls wouldn't look at me. And finally my dad said, "You got to take up a musical instrument. You needed a hobby." So I looked around me and I saw guys with tubas and, French horns and triangles, and it didn't look terribly attractive. And then I heard Dick Dale on the radio doing Miserlou, and it sounded like the sonic equivalent of a guy running over the goal line to score a touchdown. And I said, "That's it. That's what I want to do. That is the sound I want to make." And as I got better, I really had to work for anything that I got. I was not a prodigy. I had to work my ass off for every bit of musicality that I got. So I was very quickly called into a band I was a sophomore in high school at this point. I was called into a band with a bunch of seniors, which at that point was a big deal. These were the hipsters, the finger popping daddies.
Yeah, I do. The finger popping daddies, man. That's what it's about. All the hipsters, all the hipsters, the flipsters. Oh, so those. Yeah, I mean, but so what? You were a freak. You were a freak. So what? All the cats were freaks. I mean, really. I mean, there was peer pressure, but you know what? I think that what I'm getting at with you is that you guys paved your own way. There were other ways to live. Okay, there was not one set of rules you had to play by. So I mean, don't belittle yourself. So and continue.
Well, no. So I showed up, and they said, "Can you do the intro to Pipeline?" So, I blazed through that, and they said, "Well, you've got the gig." And I said, "Well, I could do Miserlou too." And after I did Miserlou, I really had the gig, and I learned a lot from these cats. They're much older and much hipper than I was. Then I started hanging out at my brother's apartment in Berkeley. He was going to UC Berkeley. He lived with a bunch of guys who were folk singers. All the guys from Country Joe and the Fish lived there. And it was just this massive, massive musical education. After that,
well, no, let me just stop you there. This is so.
Yes.
I mean, this is the thing that now that I'm getting off on at 39, because I've done a couple of interviews, and Country Joe. Let me tell you, my man. I hope you're on the mend, and I'm coming after you again, brother. And you're not going to hide behind your wife. You're going to do an interview with me. I'll just tell you that right now. But those cats, Melton, Yorm, Tuna, Airplane, Santana was Latin rock. The Dead, they all were folkies. But you were a rocker.
Well, I was and I wasn't.
Well, no, but I want to be clear. I need you to just break this down. I want you to put yourself. You can obviously define yourself, but I also want you to talk about this because I was talking to Dolph Remp. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
He's the head of SIR, so Studio Instrument Rentals. He started.
Oh, yes.
All right, so I did an interview with
I do know him,
and he brought up something interesting.
I know
He kind of called me out. Not he didn't call me out. He actually made a good point, and I wanted you to add this as subset B. Is once you define Greg Douglas, I want you to tell me because he challenged me. I said Cipollina was the only rocker in that area, and he said Moby Grape or Jerry Miller was doing it before Cipollina. But I don't know. I wasn't born. So please break it all down.
Well, I learned a lot of bluegrass stuff. I learned how to play Black Mountain Rag, and then by Doc Watson. But then what really got me going into the dark side of electricity is I went and saw a concert at the Berkeley Community Theater that headlined Chuck Berry. And I saw that son of a bitch doing his duck walk, and best I ever saw him play, man, because he wasn't just depending on his stage tricks. He was playing his ass off because he was surrounded by a bunch of other guys that were as good as he was, and he had to bring on his game.
Right on.
So that's when I joined a number of rock bands, and the best of which was a group called The Virtues that did Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Kinks and that kind of thing. And it was that's when my education really started, because we got up there in our gold suits one night, opening. We won so many battles of the bands that they wouldn't let us enter anymore. We became the guest artist. So the curtain opened. We were there in our matching gold lame suits, and the screaming of the girls was deafening. And I said, I am so screwed. I am so screwed. There goes college. There goes everything. The week after that, I went to the Fillmore and I saw the Yardbirds. And they had Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck in the band. So if there was any doubt that college was about to go down the toilet, the Yardbird show pretty much did it.
Okay, but I didn't make my question clear. Barry was influential on you, and so were the Yardbirds. So you're talking about some British cats, and you're talking about Chuck Berry, who obviously was one of the
right.
one of the cats that came out of Chicago. So but for the lineage here, who was the first rocker that came out of that San Rafael, Berkeley, Oakland marination out there? Who was it? Because all I'm saying is Dolph Remp, when I said that Cipollina was the first, because Cipollina was playing gigs in '63, and he's playing surf music and, trying to be like that. But all those other cats, like you said, Fish Melton, Garcia, Yorma, they were all folkies, right? And then he said Moby Grape, and he kind of got me there. But I wanted to ask Greg Douglas.
All right, well, you can add me because I was in the East Bay scene, and the guys that I was sharpening my knives for there were two guys in particular. There was a guy named Tim Barnes, who later became the guitarist for Stoneground, and there was this cat named Nino Reggiarello, who was the fastest guitar player I have ever seen. And he became...
I've never heard of either of these cats. I love it. I mean,
Yep.
Barnes maybe, but this other dude. So you're telling me they predated? Where were they? Were the originals?
They, as far as I know, they were either contemporary with Cipollina, or they were contemporary. I mean, there was a whole rock and roll scene in the East Bay that nobody talks about, but I was a product of that. So yeah, I mean, I was a rocker. I mean, I was a rocker.
No, I know you were. No, but I want to talk. So that East Bay, you're talking about cats from the East Bay, because Cipollina was Cipollina was Marin County, and you're talking about Oakland, and you're dropping these names, but who was the first? So I mean, who was the first local cat that you saw playing a rock gig? Was it Steve Miller? I mean, who? I mean, again, Miller was not local. What am I talking about? Who was the first local cat?
No.
Yeah, who was the first local cat that was playing a rock gig?
Well, two guys. I mean, Tim Barnes. I saw him play, and I realized that I was a moron in comparison.
We're not going to be self-deprecating, Douglas. You held your own just fine. Okay.
No,
so what? So he was a monster. That's great. I mean, he was good.
He was very good, and it gave me something to aim for.
Right.
Now, Nino Reggiarello, Carlos Santana was absolutely blown away by him. Carlos saw him play and said, "Holy moly," or however you say "holy moly" in Spanish. But so that's where I learned my bones. That's where I said, "Man, I've got to cuff these cats. If I'm going to make it, I've got to go in and eviscerate these dudes."
Wow.
Because otherwise, I'm not going to make it. So ultimately, I must say I did very well.
Okay, so would you say that you were you aware of the Spiders with Butch Giannini?
No.
Okay, so the Spiders were an East Bay band, but can you talk about cutting these guys the first time you got on the stand and stepping up to the plate, and not like, not advocating violence, but where you really got off and were able to channel, where you got some recognition. The point is you got someone's attention. Can you paint that picture? First time you got up, where was it? Which club was it at? I mean, there's so many. Were you playing a lot of the black clubs?
We didn't really play the black clubs. We were pretty white. But I can tell you a couple of moments where I realized that I had what it took to be on top of the heap. Once was in a jam with Tim Barnes And he saw me when I was starting out, and he underestimated my skills. And I got in a jam session with him, and I just, well, I kicked his ass. I absolutely took him by surprise.
You took him to the woodshed, yeah.
Yeah, I took him to the woodshed. The other moment was being pushed on stage at the Carousel Ballroom by my friends. And the other guitarist on stage was Peter Green.
Now, I don't know that name either. Who was Peter?
Peter Green was the original guitarist for Fleetwood Mac.
Wow.
And
wow.
He was as important as Eric Clapton. He was as important as any of those guys. And unfortunately, he had a nervous breakdown later on. But that night, I was playing rhythm for him, and he kept saying something to me I could not understand. And finally, I went over and I said, Peter, what are you saying? He says, play some lead for fuck's sake.
Wow.
And so I just ripped into it.
Oh, my, just stop playing rhythm and just start leading, bro.
Yeah, he said, go for it. And backstage, he said, I could tell you were a great player, but don't be so friggin' timid. Just get up there and go for it. He said, my God, you're never going to get anywhere by being a faint heart. So, boy, what a lesson that was, especially, hearing it from Peter Green. And I hope this is kind of going in the direction that you want to go.
Greg, you obviously, you need to listen to my interviews. They're all stream of consciousness. Nothing, there's no right or wrong way to go. So, we're just...
Okay,
all right, so,
okay.
Yeah, so you talk about I'm just going to read this quote to you because I interviewed, it's probably a cat you crossed paths with, was Rusty Young from Poco. Originally from Buffalo Springfield,
right.
Okay. He's talking, Clive Davis said to him, because they were incorporating country instruments into rock tunes, right? That was their thing.
Right.
All right. And so all of a sudden you had pedal steels going through a Leslie speaker with a fuzz tone. And then you had Barry Melton. And I just want you to riff on this in your own way, in your own evolution. But so that was the country rock. And this
right.
this was the folk equivalent, and this is what Melton said. If I can just he said, and then just apply this to country weather or whatever gigs, the virtues, whatever early gigs you had. He said, Barry said, we knew what jazz was. It was counterculture. If you understand jazz standards are really the corniest songs, like My Funny Valentine. He gives an example, but by the time you get to the middle of the song, you can't tell what it is necessarily because you drop the presumption of structure. You know what you're playing,
right.
which helps, but it doesn't sound like the song you begin with. You can do that through other kinds of music as well, but that's in essence what the music was driven to. We understood what jazz was, but nobody knew how to do that in traditional folk music. When you're really in the zone, the structure exists, but it only exists in your mind. You're no longer tied to it. Give me that philosophy from Greg Douglas and how you incorporate it into your bands like Country Weather.
Well, for one thing, I was learning how to play guitar on stage, literally in front of people. I was learning the mechanics of the instrument, but it was at a great time because we could expand in the middle of a tune and do these 15-minute extrapolations. And it was great for me because I learned how to make a conversational statement using my guitar. I was able to tell a story using my guitar because that particular time gave me it gave me the okay to do that. By the way, I was a big Barry Melton fan.
He's such a man. You know, I was, you know, Barry is just a beautiful cat and a brilliant guy. He wasn't a major chops guy. You know, he was just to me. You tell me. I mean, he's a beautiful cat. To me he's not somebody who was playing like Terry Haggerty or, you know, Greg Douglas.
No.
You know, but Melton had his niche. He knew what he was good at, and he stayed in that groove.
Right. Well, I don't know, man. I saw Barry Melton a few times where he had chops for days, and he was just absolutely breathtaking. I saw him once opening for the Yardbirds, and another folkie trying to be a rock and roll player. Who gives a shit? And then I saw him playing a show at on campus at UC Berkeley, and he just floored me. He sounded so great. I mean, it was just like, what happened? So yeah, I mean, he brought up Terry Haggerty. I just did a series of gigs with Terry.
You know what? Dude. Tell me about. I want you want to talk about a cat who is all heart and who's beyond the pale as far as, like, I mean, Santana influenced by Haggerty, Garcia influenced by Haggerty, and just the most beautiful person in the world. You want to talk about what these gigs mean, what the significance of the gigs mean, and can you talk about Hags back in the day?
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Haggerty, that, God, that son of a bitch. We were playing a gig at the Concord Coliseum.
Right.
And
what about Pinky's Pizza?
Huh?
Pinky's Pizza?
Well, I missed the Pinky's Pizza.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So you Concord? Where were you? Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Okay, that's all right. But that's Hag did talk about Pinky's Pizza. He, self-deprecating. I was so self-deprecating to a fault back then.
Right. I can't even imagine, dude. You were so cocky but self-deprecating. But I mean, all you guys were. I don't know. You didn't. It was great, man. It was like it was a drag if somebody took themselves too seriously. You know.
Oh yes. Like let's see. A lot of the guys from LA, for instance.
That's an interesting way to put the divide. That's an interesting way to. Anyway, go ahead. So Hags at the Concord. What happened?
Okay, so I got done with my set, and Hag got done with his set. I was just, of course, goggle-eyed from watching Hag play, because I'd never seen anybody play that outside and then come back to reality and make it work.
Wow. So he was going. Was he? You mean, how free was he getting with the guitar? How outside the box? He was still telling a story?
Yeah. So he walked up to me and he said, "You are going to be a great, great guitar player. You not only have the chops, you have the heart and the soul, and you were able to put together a solo that makes sense and moves people's hearts." And he said, "You want to come over to my house and jam?"
That's freaking.
And there I am.
There you go.
I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went over. I hung with him at his house. It was a crazy place to be. His father was a great guitar player. And, Terry and I are in doing our psychedelic jam. His father walks in with an L5, puts it behind his head, and plays Flight of the Bumblebee, and walks out of the room without saying a fucking word.
Yo, dude.
So
I know because his dad was playing his dad was playing on Good Times jazz records and things like that. He was ferocious.
yeah.
Player. Yeah, ferocious dude.
So it just that was so cool, man. And Hag and I stayed friends for years. Finally, we did a gig 2 years ago, and we just killed it. We just absolutely killed it. It was so much fun. You know, I mean, we waited 40 years to pull it off.
Can you talk about the feeling of, the fact that it was such a communal experience, and yet, everybody's doing it in their own. A lot of people are giving back, but what is it like to connect again in the groove musically on the bandstand with somebody that you hadn't played with for so long? I mean, just in general, what is that feeling like?
It was. This is a word that's become a bit of a cliche, but in this case, it absolutely works. It was transcendent.
What is it? Now, everybody has their own definition. Tell me the Douglas definition of transcendent, because you've already used I wrote this down. Examples of extrapolations. You learned to get comfortable being able to stretch out on the bandstand. There was no formulaic bullshit. So extrapolate on transcendency.
Terry and I would solo, and I would support him, and then he would support me when I soloed, and then we would begin to weave in and out of each other's musical lines. And I listened to this thing on a CD, and my God, it sounded great. It was out of space music. It was just beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment. I feel so fortunate to have it work, and to have it work with Terry Haggerty. I mean, he was one of my boys. He was one of my idols, and we just walked off that stage with both of us with massive shit-eating grins, and the audience would not let us off. They would not let us leave the stage.
Talking to Greg Douglas. He was one of the earliest supporters of my show. I've done a couple of interviews with Hags, and and I didn't really have my ear around the Sons' music for a while, and now, as a rudimentary timekeeper, can you talk about who was in Country Weather?
Sure.
Yeah, because to me, and then where did you fit into the paradigm? Like, the Dead, half the Cats weren't musicians to start with. The Sons were an incredibly accomplished band. Quicksilver was great. But Dave Freiberg was just learning the bass. Janis. It just so many. So where did the Weather fit in, and break down who was in that band and where you because you're totally under the radar as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. Country Weather was, you talk about first tier bands like, the Dead and the Airplane and Moby Grape, and then you have your second tier bands like, Cold Blood and the Sons of Champlin. And then we were in the third tier. Country Weather was kind of, the guys that you saw on all those posters, but you wondered, who the hell were these guys? Well, we were a bunch of kids from Contra Costa County. The band started when my dad was getting a haircut, and the barber said, well, my son plays bass in a band. And my dad said, well, my son plays guitar. So we got together, and it kind of clicked. These guys were. I mean, compared to me, they were much cooler. As I said, and I'm not being self-deprecating here. By the way, it's just the truth. I was kind of a dweeb, kind of a nerd, which was fine. It worked.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't. I mean, you could play. I mean, the point is, you could ultimately. I mean, Peter Green was telling you, freaking play lead. I'm exhausted.
Oh boy, yeah, I could play. Yeah. No doubt about it. I listen to the old tapes now, and I was playing my ass off. I had no idea how good I was.
But so back to country weather. So can you talk about the story of how the band formed?
Well, initially we were called the Virtues, and we played sock hops. We wore matching suits, and we did Rolling Stones, Beatles, the Kinks, the whole deal, the whole gamut of the British invasion. And then one day we discovered pot. Somebody brought some pot over, and
some good bud.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how old I am. We were buying matchboxes. We bought matchboxes worth of pot. And all of a sudden, I took that first hit of pot, and I heard music in a way that I had never experienced it before. It suddenly opened up into this universe of something new, and I realized that I could be a part of something so much bigger than myself that I suggested to the band, I said, you know what, we can't walk into an audition at the Fillmore wearing matching suits. It's done. We can't call ourselves the Virtues. It's done. It's over. We have to come up with something different. So we sat around, passing a doob, and somehow the name Country Weather came about, and that was the name of the band. And we started writing our own material. And the first big show we did was at the Avalon with Flat and Scruggs, the bluegrass guys.
I can't. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I have a great story to tell you about Earl Scruggs. Go ahead.
Okay. There we were, man. We were playing at the Avalon for the first time, and the reason we got the gig is we had the word country in our name, and it had nothing to do with the fact with it being musically appropriate. These guys were hippies, and they said, screw it. Your Country Weather, these are Flat and Scruggs, here we go. So,
I'm just like, who was, but I just want to be clear. I mean, Bill Graham was running the show at the Fillmore.
Right.
But who was, the Avalon was kind of one of those places that was, you could buy a ticket at the Fillmore, and you go to a jam, you go to the show later at the Avalon. Did they work in conjunction? Who ran the Avalon?
Chet Helms. Chet Helms ran the Avalon.
I dig.
Yep.
I dig. So so just because of the genre of the word country, you got put on this gig with Flat and Scruggs.
Yep. Wow. And it was just a trip. I mean, watching these guys in their matching nudie suits, surrounded by all these pot-smoking hippies. I mean, Earl Scruggs was a great guy. He was very friendly. He was very open. He was talking to everybody. Lester Flatt, I held up my hand to shake his hand, and he acted like I had just offered him a warm, fresh bowel movement. He was just did not want to shake the hand of a filthy, dirty, crab-ridden hippie. So,
well, it's so beautiful. I want to tell you this story. I don't have it the audio queued up, but I played it for Rusty yesterday, and that was Rusty played on the Earl Scruggs review in 1975, and I was played in this clip from the pedal steel guitar player from many bands, but from the Jim Kweskin Jug Band called Bill Keith. I don't know if you ever knew that cat. Bill Keith.
I know Bill, yeah.
Okay, so Bill starts telling me this story on the radio about Earl's experience at the Avalon, because he said, you could just smell the pot in the air. And for these guys, I mean, Earl was really mellow, but he was still like, this is pretty out there, And so, Earl had done his fair share of smoking pot, but he wasn't smoking anymore. And Bill Keith was driving back across the country from California to Boston, I guess, and he stopped in Texas, and he visited Earl and his wife. And he said, Earl, what's really cool is you don't have to smoke this stuff anymore. You can actually eat it. I baked some brownies. And and Earl's like, oh, really? Oh, well, that's interesting. So, Bill ingested a brownie just to show him that he wasn't going to keel over and die. And his wife decided to save hers for later. And Scruggs inhaled the pot brownie, and about a half hour later, he's like, Elise, or I forget his exact wife's name. Elise, the color on the TV's going in and out. It's all different colors. She goes, Earl. Earl. This commercial's in black and white. So I mean, the dude was as hip as they come. And Flat obviously was just a douchebag. So whatever. Anyway, after that, how did you guys wind up? I guess did you stick around long enough to play on gigs with Sly Stone or the Dead, or I mean where does this? Yeah, so talk about the evolution after that gig, and then how you got connected to the other quote-unquote Bay Area bands.
Well, we had a manager, a guy named Bob Strand, and the guy was just an animal. He worked his ass off to get us gigs. He got us gigs at the Fillmore. As you mentioned, Sly Stone. He got us a job opening for Sly Stone. He got us a job replacing Sly Stone when they didn't show up for a gig. He got us a job opening for 10 years after. Got a job opening up for the Jeff Beck Band. And that was, of course, Jeff Beck was and still is my idol. So I went and hid in the dressing room while he was playing, so I would have some semblance of an ego left when I came out to play. But yeah, we played a lot at the Fillmore, and we actually were booked by Bill Graham's agency. So we played with Cold Blood and you name it. We played constantly.
Did you play the Straight Theater?
Yep, sure did.
Sure did. And were you? I just want you to talk about your. I mean, the Peter Green story is great, but can you talk about what you learned about telling a story in improvisation on the bandstand? Can you talk about how you learned to have a beginning, a middle, and an end? And that might have been an 8 or 10 minute jam, but how did you really learn to develop more vocabulary?
Well, what I learned about doing a solo was to not give everything in the beginning, because if you came out with both barrels blazing, you were going to have nowhere to go.
Right.
So I would watch guys like Carlos Santana and Jerry Garcia on a good night, and they would start off very quietly and leave a lot of space in there, and then gradually build up. And that's why I came up with the term, and this has been used by other people to describe my playing, conversational. I'm a conversational soloist. I say something, and I say it in a way to where it starts off quietly and then begins to peak, and then it gets up as high as it can go, and then it stops. And hopefully it leaves the audience drained. And that was just a matter of learning and doing it 1,000 times and learning what worked and what didn't work. And I found that almost always that conversational style of playing served me well.
Can you talk about it as related to, did you become part of the Mill Valley Gang? I mean, isn't that where Terry and the Pirates emanated from?
Well, yeah, I was, I started off as an East Bay guy. I had a band called Mistress that never got a record deal. And I ended up hanging out with John Cipollina and his crew. And John and I had some bands together. And I always considered John to be one of my best friends. The guy was incredibly generous to me musically as far as giving me space to play. And we, once again, just like me and Haggerty, we would interweave with one another in an entirely different way than Haggerty and myself.
How was it different? This is very important, Douglas. Explain how the musical conversation was different from you and Hags.
John was a stylist. He was, Haggerty was a very schooled guitar player. John had a certain sound. And, to be honest, when John was off, when he was having an off night, it could be pretty dreadful. And, and he'd be the first to admit that. But when he was great, there was nobody that could touch him. He was the most fluid, beautiful. I mean, it's indescribable. And somehow I found a place in that. I was a more solid guitar player than John, so I gave him the support that he needed to do what he did. And he learned from listening to me how to give me the support to do what I did. So it was a very, very, it was a great musical relationship.
Did John almost, even though he knew he was sucking, did he almost knew he was in kind of almost to use a sports analogy, he was in a slump and he was going to play himself out of that slump, so he didn't really get discouraged per se if he was having a bad night? How would he be would he just kind of sink away and then come back and burn like no other?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. John, like you see, take a guy like Eric Clapton. I would see him make a mistake during a set, and the rest of the set would be horrible. Because
he couldn't get over it.
But with John, he just got right back on the horse and kept on going. And make no mistake about it, John and I had a happily adversarial relationship musically, where there was a healthy competition going on there, and it was great because when my ass was dragging, John would come in and say, "Okay, you're gonna kick back. Well, watch this," and then that would make me wake up and do the same thing to him. And it was great. There's nobody I've ever played with where I had that dynamic, where we could compete, but do so in a way that was friendly and benign.
I dig. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, you wound up going over and connecting with the Mill Valley. Terry and the Pirates was birthed out of that. Can you talk about how that group was? You know, I mean, a lot of the recordings don't come out till the late 70s, early 80s, but you guys were cooking the groove much earlier than that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, Terry used to open up for country weather all the time, and he and I became friends. I'd go hang out with him in North Beach, and we made a demo called In-Laws and Outlaws, and it got Terry a record deal with Warner Brothers Records. And at that session, I met a lot of people that determined my future. One of them was Cipollina. That's where I met John. I met Nicky Hopkins, who was producing the thing. I met Lonnie Turner, who was playing bass, and with whom I co-wrote Jungle Love. And just, you know, looking back on it, it was a career-defining series of recording sessions, and it made me make the decision to quit country weather and go out on my own.
Interesting. So, what was your first stop? I mean, what was your first stop on your own road, so to speak?
Well, I put together a band called Mistress. It was a power trio, and it completely changed my style of guitar. You know, all of a sudden I went from trying to be as fast and as, you know, crazy as possible to being a real kick-ass, you know, down in the dirt, bluesy rock guitar player.
Just getting, you're getting dirt on it, right? You're just getting dirt.
I got real good. I got real good, real quick, and all of a sudden, the whole world took notice. I mean, you know, Bill Graham took notice. He named me as one of the top guitar players in San Francisco. I was in the paper every other week. You know, Greg Douglas is doing this, Greg Douglas is doing that, and it was the beginning of a very a very interesting, and it was a flowering of my career.
What did you, I mean? Did it help you with your peers in the sense that, I mean, like how quickly did you? I mean, you knew Steve Miller before when he was just a blues cat coming in from Chicago trying to be like T-Bone Walker, but
right.
Did those guys see you differently then? And they were like, he's tripping on his own thing, which is cool. And we want to, I mean, what were the sort of I guess the best things in life are unexplained. What was one of those unexplained kind of things that helped you along during that time? Besides the drugs and things like that, obviously, you know.
Yeah, besides the drugs, which, you know, were kind of a given with everybody.
It's just part of the time, you know.
Well, you know, we have to do what we have to do. I was working with a guy named Mallory Earl, who kind of, you know, would bring us in at midnight to record this Mistress album, and he would start calling me in to do other things. You know, he'd say, you know, hey, there's a guitar player down there. He's too fucked up to play. Could you come down here? And I ended up playing with oh God, Link Ray. Link Ray, the guy who did
Wow. No,
Rumble.
but that was one of Cipollina's heroes.
That's right.
You
And
played with Link Ray. That is ridiculous. But you were, and were you guys trading? Were you communicating, or were you basically in the rhythm area?
oh no! I played one of the solos on the album that got a really screaming great review in Rolling Stone magazine.
That is fantastic. Do you remember the name of the tune, or
The name of the what?
what
Of the
was,
album?
or the tune that you played that you ripped up?
Oh, the name of the song was B. What was it called? Oh, You Really Got a Hold on Me. Not the
Sure.
Motown song,
No, right.
but a different one. And I also worked with Alex Taylor, James's brother.
That's fantastic. What was that cat? That cat. I could. He always mercurial cat, to say the least. But well, yeah. I mean, what about? I mean, what was your experience? You must have been hanging with Mario Cipollina.
Mario, yeah. Mario and I are still brothers, man.
Dude, I want to tell you something. I just want to be very clear. This is going to warm your heart because Mario, in his own way, as his own spirit, we are very connected. And he has helped me get to some cats that otherwise I would not get to because he understands, as you do, what I'm doing on new media. And he's an angel for me. And I know he's fighting his own things just like everybody else. But, man, I love that. Can you tell me a good Mario Cipollina story from back in the day? Because, I mean, that dude he was eating liquid acid, and the conductor's baton started to look like a fan blade. He was also getting picked up by Stoneground in a limo, from Mount Tam High. So, I mean, I've done some deep hangs with that cat. He's a great cat.
Well, I did a thing back in 2003 called Rock for Christmas that was kind of this weird ass charity thing that shall we say wasn't too terribly well planned out, and I left after about 4 gigs because it just was such a disaster. But we put together a band called the Monsters of Classic Rock that included me, Mario Cipollina, Chris Slade, the drummer from AC/DC, a guy named Terry Elus, who now works with Great White, and it was a great band. We got a chance to play all our hits. But the thing I remember about Mario was him calling me over to his room, and his room was full of toys. I mean, toys. I mean, like, flying helicopters flying all around the room. Just, I mean, stuff everywhere. And I said, Mario, how did you get this on the plane? And he said, oh, I have to have something to do. I have to have something to keep me busy. And I said, oh my God, this guy goes beyond being a character. So, but boy, he gets up on that stage, man, and he is all business. He is a bad boy.
So
and,
yeah, I mean, this is so. Wow, that's what an impressive situation that is. I mean, where? We're gonna have to do set 2 here. We've been cooking for 55 minutes already. I mean, just unbelievable. Where are you still growing, and what are you still trying to learn about as far as your musical aptitude and your
Ah, okay.
And not just aptitude, but also just trying to get more wisdom. I mean, we're all still learning every day, and I just know Roy Haynes at 90 something years old is still learning stuff on the bandstand, on the drum kit. So,
Yeah.
what are you learning?
Well, I am learning that there are new songwriting partners out there that I can work with. I just put out, about a year ago, I put out a CD called The Flight of the Golden Dragon, which is by far the best thing I've ever done. It's something else, man. It's just,
Tell me what is it? The feeling? What is the? Why does it? Why do you make a statement like that?
It's the feel, it's the guitar parts, it's the songs. I found a wonderful co-writer in this guy named Michael Muldoon, who just, I made a whole bunch of guitar tracks on a home recording machine, and I gave him a whole CD, and I said, "Here, take this home and see what you can come up with." He came back the next week with 8 completed songs. And it was phenomenal. And then I found a guy who owned a studio over in El Cajon, California, and he and I put together a really unique sounding collection of music that is just phenomenal. I still listen to it and shake my head in amazement. I'm also involved in a thing called the Six String Society. It's all the best guitar players from Southern California, and they get up, do their thing. There's usually about 6 or 7 guys. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of several of the shows. And I've also discovered that I have a talent for being sort of a stand-up comedian.
Mm-hmm. I dig.
And I get up and I act as the MC for the shows. And it's been a lot of fun. It's something I never thought I would do. Also, I have a new project that's about to take off, starting in England, called The Pompatus of Love. It's a Steve Miller tribute band. And
okay, so, but I got to be honest. For somebody as absolutely singular and sort of, I mean, he's not dead yet.
No.
Why do you need to do a tribute to this cat? That's puzzling to me because explain. Maybe just homage. I mean, legacy. I mean, you know him personally. You've collaborated with him a bunch. To me, it's like
yeah.
I part of my issue. And I don't see a ton of live music, and I certainly don't go on tour and whatnot. But I see Journey and I see Tower of Power, and they got to pay the bills, but they're just going out and playing their hits from 40 years ago. So how is it different? I guess when you say it's a Steve Miller tribute, I have this immediate thing in my head, but maybe it's got a Douglas twist to it.
Well, it does. I mean, for one thing, you've got an original band member in this so-called tribute band. So it's a cut above the rest. It's a cut above the rest of the tribute bands because you got the real deal. You got somebody that was there. I can teach everybody all the parts, and I have been very fortunate in finding guys who have this astonishing chemistry. And we are just going to go out and kill it. And frankly, I'm not getting any younger. I'm 68 years old, And I got another 10 years maybe.
You got
and I want to get out.
what is that, a hurdy-gurdy back there? What is that?
Oh no, that's our wind chime.
Oh, the wind chimes. I like, dude. Cipollina's talking to us right now, man. No doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, dude.
yeah, probably.
Well, I'm just saying, you're not getting any younger. This is the final question. I'm set one for you. As an MC,
Okay.
I mean, what I've noticed on Facebook too. I mean, I clearly have, as you can see, I can extract content from everybody, and I am transcribing that content and blasting it out. And you have to get somebody's attention on new media. In today's digital world, back in the Straight Theater and the Avalon and, Earl Scruggs was eating pot brownies, you didn't have to deal with the distractions. Right. You didn't have to deal with the digital distractions. So how does Greg Douglas as an MC get that attention of the crowd so that they lock in on you and say, hey, I want to hear what this guy has to say with his apparatus?
Repeat the very last sentence that you said.
So here's the thing. You say you find yourself being a comedian, an MC of sorts. And I say to myself, with the distractions of digital technology now, people staring at their phones, as an MC, how do you get them to pay attention to you enough so that then they want to see you play your guitar?
I come up with a hook that is going to make them pay attention, whether those, cyber addicted assholes want to or not. The first thing I did was I said, well, let's make this thing happen from the rest home for retired rockers. And I'm going to walk up on stage in my bathrobe and my slippers. And I got up, I kind of shuffled up there and, said, what in God's name are you people doing in my room? And just, bitching and going on and on. And I had a nurse, this nurse with these enormous mammary glands who was, giving me my medication. And of course I would say, medication time, my favorite time of the day, dear. Thank you. And then I said, well, I still play a little bit. Would you guys like to hear me play? And of course, they said yes. So, I took off my bathrobe, and underneath I had on this sleeveless shirt with a skull on it and these skin-tight pants and this kind of scarf on my head. And I got up and did a version of Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited that just absolutely kicked ass. And that was it. That got the show going. And then the rest of it was just improvisation.
So you tug on their heartstrings, and then they say, yeah, we want to see you play, and then you tear it up.
That's right.
You make it seem pretty simple, man.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I'm having fun. People respect me because I'm old, and it's great, man. They really do. They say, well, this guy survived this long. He must know something, and I do. I've survived a long time, and I'm still out there kicking ass. I'm kicking, I get up there with these kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old, and I eviscerate them. I do it's great. I know that sounds terribly.
Well, you said, to me, that's the first time that you're, I can understand with your peers you wanted to cut them. That sounds like your ego there. That was the first time I've heard you sort of go to that place because you've been pretty humble about it. One of the reasons that I do this show is just for the reasons that we just cooked here for over 60 minutes because those younger cats need you and they want to cut you. And I guess it's kind of cool because you know what? the guys like Barnes and that other cat. By the way, you got to spell his last name for me. The guy who's just plucking.
Right. Oh yeah, Reggirello. Yeah.
Reggirello.
Yeah.
Whatever. How do you spell his last name?
Well, I don't know.
That's all right.
Ruggierello.
I mean, those guys were probably like, I'm going to eviscerate this little boy. So maybe it was no different. But I just say, yeah.
Yeah. It is no different. Except some of these kids underestimate me. I saw this one guy get up, and he saw me. He saw this old guy, and I was like, oh great, jeez. And afterwards, he said, you started playing, and I was so intimidated I didn't even want to pick up my guitar.
That's right.
And I said, you have no idea how happy that makes me. I mean, far be it from your misery to make to feed my ego, but it made me happy to hear it, man. Thank you for saying that.
Well, I mean, it's the truth, Greg Douglas, and it's great to hang with you, man. Please send me a good picture for the web post, and I'll get you a copy of this later on tomorrow, maybe today or tomorrow. But it was a great hang, and I'm sure you don't remember what you said. I'm sure you didn't remember what you said most of the time, but that's the point. I took you out of your mindset and had you on a trip. So it was a ball.
Great. Well, I hope you got something useful, and email me. I will send you a copy of my CD.
Sounds good, Mr. Douglas. Bless you, man. Keep it going.
All right, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Part 1 in the books with Greg Douglas. Country Weather, among others. He continues to inspire. He continues to want to cut the younger cats. We'll be back this week on the Jake Feinberg Show. Until then, peace.